Hi, everybody. Niles Ray, Clarkston IT Department here, talking about announcements again. This time we're going to go over a different announcement that's a little bit more tricky, and I think it best to start by explaining why this is a little bit more tricky. When using this option, you actually give yourself more abilities. You actually can do multiple screens, multiple cameras, multiple microphones. You can actually have a lot more options available to you. However, YouTube does very little with this option. What it does is a lot of the work is done by an encoder. Now, unfortunately, all encoders I've been able to find up to this point are Mac, Windows, or Linux related. So you have to use one of those. I happen to be on a MacBook right now, but the program is very similar whether it's Mac or Windows. And in fact, I found this option to be easy once you get everything set up. Well, setting everything up is a little confusing. So I'm going to be going through this step by step with you. On my MacBook here, you will notice that I have YouTube Studio open. But one thing you cannot see is I also have something called OBS software open, which stands for Open Broadcaster Software. And this happens to be a Mac version. Now, what essentially this encoding software does is this is where all the filming happens. This is where all the video is done, all the audio is done. And all this does is sends out a signal to YouTube, and then YouTube broadcasts it. The first thing you have to do is either download it onto your computer or get it from the App Store, whichever one you choose, depending on the different computer you've got. But then once you've got it done, you're going to come over to this settings option. So when you click on that settings option, what this is going to do is these options are all you need to actually do your recording and do it the right way. So the general tab gives you a number of different options, and I've changed very little of this. I've stuck with a lot of the defaults, and the defaults seem to work just fine. This stream is where the biggest confusion comes in, because what you're going to do is, if you are downloading this the first time, this service will not say YouTube streaming. It will say custom. You have a lot of different options here to pick from, but since I'm using YouTube, I will pick that first. The primary ingest server is going to be your almost 99% of the time what you pick. I have yet to use the backup ingest server, so I always stick with the primary ingest server. But this is what is perhaps the most confusing, the stream key. Because when you first set up your YouTube account, it's going to give you a stream key. And I was always under the impression that one stream key is kind of like the lock that opens the house. Well, unfortunately, what I didn't realize is you can create new stream keys and reuse them. So think of it like you set up a channel that has a skeleton key. So every video you make, you don't have to keep redoing this cut and paste option. So I'm going to show you how that works and how we go back and forth between YouTube and this to get to talk back and forth. The output stream is, believe it or not, the most confusing, but also the most useful if you start to understand what you need. Your video bitrate, I think when I first started, the default setting was 6,000 kilobytes per second. And in fact, that's about 4.5 megabits per second. And really what you want to do is, depending on how good your connection is, you can either increase that number or decrease that number. I keep it at 4,500 just because it's lower than really what is expected. I think with 6,000 being the default, what I found is my connection wasn't good enough. So when I started sending it out, I'd get a lot of pauses in my video. When I lowered this down, it tended to fix that. So there's another option to give you a little bit of better quality on your video, and I'll show you where that is just in a little bit. As you go down, you can change the audio recording format. What this is when through this encoding software, you can use it more than just streaming. You can use it to make videos, which is kind of nice. I don't use it for that very often, but it is available. So that's why I've got it set as MP4, especially using my MacBook for that. When you go to audio, you want to use these because you notice how most of these say disabled, except for one that says default. If I move this out of the way, you'll see right here, it's behind here, it says microphone or auxiliary, and that's the one I have defaulted. This is where if you have multiple cameras that have multiple microphones, because I'm using webcams for my stuff, those microphones are built right in. This is where you want to be able to add more. You can add up to 4 cameras and 4 microphones through this software. Where the old YouTube, where we could use multiple cameras, the most I ever saw was 2. So at least for here, this gives you the option to select between different cameras, different microphones. When you go down to video, this is where you want to try and keep it at least 1280 by 800. If you've got a really good a signal, you can use the 1920 because when you use the 1920, you're going to get a more crisp picture. It's going to look a lot better. But for what we're using it for, just with the kids, I keep it at 1280 by 800. The less number you can put on there, the faster it's going to upload. So if the higher number you use, the more you might get some pauses and scratches in there. So it really comes down to personal preference. And finally, this hotkeys option, what this does is if you have some way on your computer to switch back and forth between cameras, you can use these hotkeys right on your keyboard to do that. So for example, when I click the space bar, it will actually start my streaming for me. So then when I go down and I want to transition to cameras, I use the arrow keys. So you can change these to whatever you want. Down here, you can see it's set for microphone auxiliary. Under audio, if I would have turned on more than one mic, there would be more than one option here. So it will adapt to what you select. And then finally, the advanced option, I don't use all that much. I stuck with the defaults on this, okay? So I'm back in the stream key of my settings function. And you can see right now I've got YouTube and YouTube Gaming select. I've got primary ingest server selected. But now I need to actually take this stream key and I need to make sure it matches YouTube. And in most cases, it won't match right off the bat. You have to go to YouTube and you have to copy the link they give you and bring it back into the OBS software. So let's go to YouTube and take a look. So I'm in YouTube on the channel dashboard, and I like to start here because this is a lot of times where YouTube will default you when you want to go to your YouTube studio. So how do we get to the point where we can make those live events? I want to start here. So in your channel dashboard, on the left side beneath, if you've got an image, you're going to find a small scrolling option, but at the bottom you'll see where it says Other Features. And in fact, we're going to take Other Features and we're going to click on Live Events. In the Live Events option, you can go to your control room, you can see any videos that are upcoming. You can even change it to any videos that are alive right now or completed. And you can see where it says New Live Event. So I go in and I click New Live Event, which is then going to open up this page, which is really important. This is where I would say we're going to give it a title, and I'm going to call it November 10th, 2019. And underneath, I do need to set a date. Now, the date's more important for subscribers because if you're a subscriber to the page, it will send you little notifications that, hey, you've got something that may go live at a certain time. If you click on the actual time of day, I always try and pick a morning time. I pick it right after our school day begins. But again, the date and the title aren't really all that important. If you decide you want to go live with this very video tomorrow at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, that won't be any problem. YouTube will still do that. You're going to pick public, private, or unlisted. Again, I went over those before. And then you're going to go ahead and hit Create Event. Now, once that happens, here's where the more important stuff occurs. Because then Google's going to bring you to this page. And this is where that stream key comes in. So when you set up your page, Google gives you a stream key. And if you use a single use stream key, that one stream key they give you when you first set up your account will work just fine. But if we're going to do announcements, and we're going to do announcements a lot, what I like to do is use the reusable stream key. So what Google will actually do, and what YouTube will actually do, is create a new stream key for us. So we come down and we've got options. We can create a new stream. We can manage the current streams we have. And then we can pick from the ones that we've actually created. But in this case, I'm going to create a new stream. And you know what? I'm just going to call this Announcements. Now, if you look down here, this is an important part because it says 3,000 to 6,000 kilobytes per second. If you remember, when we were in the OBS software, we picked 4,500. I really decide where I want to be here based on how fast my connection is. If I've got a pretty slow internet connection, then I might drop it down to 1500 to 4000. It's still going to broadcast in HD. It's just not going to go all the way up to 1080, or especially if you're into 4K. If I were to pick this option, our video is going to run really, really slow. So we can try going with 3 to 6, and if you find that that's too slow, we can go in and alter that. So we'll pick whatever we want. We're going to go ahead and hit Save Changes. But you'll notice once we've hit Save Changes, we get some options down here. So this is where Google will pop right in and go, okay, which encoder are you using? So notice it doesn't have the OBS encoder. That's okay. These are just encoders that are endorsed by YouTube. It does not mean we can't use the OBS. So we go to other encoders. It will open up some more options, but you can see here, the stream name. This is where YouTube created a new stream key for us. So we actually come here, we're going to highlight this, and we're going to copy it. And then to make matters a little easier, we're going to go down and we're going to go right back to our OBS software, where we're then going to paste that right into our OBS software. And then when we click OK, that tells our software, our encoder, to talk right to YouTube, and that tells YouTube to talk back to our encoder.